Welcome to Glocal Voices, the official podcast of the Center for Socially Engaged Theatre at the University of Regina.
Well, hello and welcome to another episode of Glocal Voices. My name is Taiwo Afolabi, the director of the Center for Socially Engaged Theatre at the University of Regina. We're live and direct at the IDIERI 2025 at the University of British Columbia in Vancouver, of course, in Canada. It's really exciting that we brought Glocal Voices here to offer that opportunity to capture and for researchers to share their ideas and the amazing work that they're doing. And in this episode, I'm going to be talking to Giovanni Ferreira, and I'm sure I'm murdering that name, so my apology, Giovanni. But I know he's going to introduce himself more in a second. I want to shout out to those behind the scene, Gabriel, Walter, and Shola, and of course Caleb, and all of those really remarkable team, and Tara, a lot of the team that are working with me to making this happen. So shout out to Festival of Arts and Discourse, because all of this is part of what we're trying to do for this particular year edition of the festival. So with that, I want to turn to Giovanni. Do you want to introduce yourself? And thank you for coming on Glocal Voices today.
Of course, thank you. Yeah, my name is Giovanni Delgado Ferreira. You can just call me Gio. And I'm a third-year graduate student doing my MFA studies at Arizona State University. I'm entering my third-year thesis project, so I'm excited because I don't have to take any more classes.
I know that feeling, yes.
And I was born and raised in Los Angeles. My mother and her family immigrated from Cuba. My father immigrated from Brazil, and so I have a very mixed cultural background from a lot of different places, and we speak a lot of different languages at home.
How many languages do you speak?
I speak Spanish fluently, and I'm like at elementary level in Portuguese.
Oh my God, remarkable. I wish I can speak that. Okay. One of the things I love about this series that we're doing at IDIERI is that we've had an array of researchers from grad student to tenure track, tenured, full prof, associate, all administrator. And it's really remarkable the kind of work that each one is doing. Now for you, and I'm going to read this and kind of got myself familiarized a little bit about your work. Part of what you did right here is that your work as a teaching artist and as a theater maker implement video game storytelling element for the benefit of media literacy, social emotional learning, and storytelling ability. What about video game? What about your research do you want to share, particularly the video game? I'm really fascinated with the intersection of video game and storytelling.
Absolutely. So I believe that video games are a really underrated media in which a unique form of storytelling can happen. Video games are almost like a co-creation with your audience, which is like the player. You're playing, and depending on the different kinds of games that there are, the different structures, just like the different structures of like performance and plays. And so I really have looked at how like the landscape of like what people want from video games have changed, and compared to how they used to. Video games, we used to put a lot of guardrails on them. Games like Ocarina of Time or like the original Legend of Zelda or Link to the Past, there's a lot of guardrails. Well, actually on the NES, the problem was that there was like no instructions. But you see a lot less tutorials as time goes on. A lot of games, I'm using the Zelda franchise as a reference just because it's a really good reference point in their game structure. Their storytelling was always pretty great. But something that had happened was that from about like 1996, when they released Ocarina of Time in Japan, to when the last one on the Wii, Skyward Sword, they had followed a very similar formula. Go to this dungeon, get this thing, go to this, then this happens, and this happens, and this happens. And so by the time that they get to Skyward Sword, players are frustrated, people want more freedom, and that's when they spend the next 5 to 6 years developing Breath of the Wild, which is like magnum opus like changed the gaming landscape and how people interact with worlds and games. It's sandbox. People can go and do what they want to and explore the stories in fragments. It's like the main character, he's recovering his memories and he has to go these different places all over the land to remember. And so I really am interested in like, that got me thinking about a really unique form of storytelling and storytelling structure. Students, I think, because I practiced theater of the oppressed and critical pedagogy, I really believe in decentralizing like the banking system of education. And so I think that open world video games and games that have this open-ended nature are really great for having students. I think that it matches the shifting landscape of where young people's minds are today. I think that less rigidity is important, and even though like those linear games are still really, really important, games with open-ended structures have made storytelling more interactive. Yeah.
As a teaching artist, how do you use that? And who are your audience?
Yeah, well, I guess I have run a couple different programs over the last year. I've done part of this program with ESL learners in public schools in Phoenix, where we did programming mostly in Spanish. Very low stakes. This is like, usually I'm working with students who have very, very low access to arts, writing, creative in general. And so when they get access to free programs like this, it can be almost overwhelming for them, because I'm just like, what do you want to do? We'll do whatever you want. And they don't know what they want. And so I think the video game structure has helped me bring them in. We'll play it, we'll talk about it for a bit. We'll do a theater-based activity that ties into what the game's story was about. And we're learning, and we're finding that it's helping them stick to fundamentals of storytelling and writing abilities. At one of the schools that I worked at in Mesa, Arizona, that's Title I school. So Title I schools means that like 90% to 100% of the students qualify for free lunch. So at this school in particular, they had just revitalized their arts program. They were called the Mesa Arts Academy, but they were just very much functioning like a normal K-8 school until they had gotten a new artistic director, and then I got to be brought in as an independent teaching artist to run this new program. And because they had some employment, there's a lot of teacher employment issues in Arizona, and one of them, they had lost this extra ESL teacher, extra ELA, English language arts teacher. And so that the video game storytelling program that we did, it really helped kind of fill in that gap for that school community in particular. There's a game called Stray that I played with them, where you like play as a cat with a backpack, and you're going through this like city that's like apocalyptic, and it's like where did all the people go? And like part of it is like understanding like the visual storytelling. And so we part of like something that I did for the students is that I watched the Mario movie and I screenshotted the hero's journey from like beginning to end, all 12 steps of it, and then we went through and we talked through the Mario movie and all 12 steps of the hero's journey, and then the plot point for the game Stray that we played. And then I had found out from one of the teachers, they had sent me a picture, I'm not allowed to say this, but I haven't said the school, is that during their state testing, one of the students had drawn the graph that we had gone over in the class. And then this summer when I was running another program at the same school, the principal came up to me and said that their literacy scores had actually increased on the state testing for the first time in a really long time. So I'm excited to get the like IRB, because technically like my work is like in progress. So I'm not allowed to like officially call it like research yet, because my paperwork it takes forever to get.
I'm not gonna ask you a question about REBs, because we're gonna spend another 1 hour on that. But I hear you, because I think that the landscape of research of REBs need to develop and match up with the level of innovation, intervention, and creativity. And I think that a lot of our universities, we need to continue to develop that. However, though, what are the tensions? When you work with these communities, and as an artist, a teaching artist, and video games, what are the tensions and what are the opportunities that you face?
Well, I think it ultimately depends on the school environment and the population that I'm working with. Most of the time, I'm entering these theater spaces, and it's changing as I continue to be this continued presence in these schools, and I'm helping change this for those landscape. But because I'm often working with students with very little access to theater, if at all, or just arts in general, a lot of students have a hard time like tapping into creativity. A lot of students have a hard time like thinking things, and so kind of the scaffolding of getting them there was the biggest roadblock. And honestly, sometimes it depends. The school that I in Mesa is run by a nonprofit organization, and because of that, working with their HR and legal department can be really obnoxious. And so like there were a number of games that I wanted to bring into the space that they like knocked down for various reasons. Even ones that were rated, like Metroid is rated E for everyone 10 and up, and she has like an arm cannon, but because her arm cannon is still like a gun of some kind, I wasn't allowed to use that. So I had to be really strategic with what games I brought into the space. And also, I have maybe 30 students in this one class, and I have to somehow, like over the course of this year, let everyone have a turn playing these single player games that I'm bringing into the space. And so that becomes a challenge, because then whoever's not playing has to like sit and absorb and watch the gameplay session, and then we talk about it. And so, more resources would most certainly help that, with like more consoles and other teaching artists, maybe like multiple groups. But I've found that it creates its own challenges in that regard.
Now I know that the world of video game it's vast now, and the implication, it's become an industry now.
Yes.
Right? And the implication, not just the economic implication of that, but the cultural implication of that. And I also know there are a lot of research that is speaking about the adverse effect of these technology.
Mm.
How would you respond to that in terms of the adverse effect of technology, of whether it's staying glued to the addiction, or staying glued to the screen, and all of this kind of, you're familiar with this argument. Mm-hmm. It's your area of research. Right?
Absolutely. I mean, it's something that like even I, growing up, because I'm almost 24. I grew up, I came into the world and video games were here, and like had already had a foot in the world, because by the time like I was born in 2001, Nintendo had released like their 4th game console. And so or at least they were about to. But I think that it's allowed me to kind of like think more about what these young people are being exposed to, and also seeing kind of the adverse effects. And I want people, rather than like saying video games as a whole, it needs to be like monitored and watched. And I was one of those kids where like I was only allowed to play video games on the weekends, and like wasn't allowed during the week. And the reality is that most of the students in the schools that I teach at don't have that parenting structure. And so what I want parents and maybe educators to think more about, and why I'm pushing for students to play these story-based games, is because we have a lot of students playing a lot of online games, like with a repetitive formula, like Fortnite or Roblox, and it's great because these games are accessible, they're free, they're communicative, they're getting students and children and people all over the world to socialize with each other. But the downside is that then they're getting all the social aspects of interacting, but we're seeing a really big decline in like young people being invested in these story games. You're seeing more and more numbers of like adults or people that grew up with the games buying these like story-based video games. And so part of what I wanted with this program was to bring these young people's attention back to play these single-player games, or they also have like co-op, other games, but getting them to engage with storytelling in some capacity. Fortnite has some storytelling, but it's very environmental, and most people just skip all over it because it doesn't really matter. But in a game where the story is the focus, this is the hook. This is how we get kids who don't like to read books into storytelling. This is how we get kids who like watch YouTube videos for like their daily content. It's I think one of the most effective hooks and segues into theater, because they're a player in the game, and at some point they'll be ready to play in real life.
Just remarkable. My final question here. What are, as you navigate through this IRB, REB, we call it REB, we call it REB here, and you continue to work as a teaching artist and finish your MFA and doing this, what are your aspirations?
My aspirations is that I'm able to get this process so that, because I have a photo release form, but I would love like a human subject release so that I would like to talk to the students and the teachers about like what these long-term goals were. By the time that I'll have finished my MFA, some of these students I will have like seen for like almost 3 years.
That's right.
So I think that there's a lot of opportunity for me, like if I had like a pool of like the more advanced students or just like a random selection of them, just to see like how they interacted and how it grew. I'm also especially really interested, and it's like these are all very vulnerable populations. All of the student, like this school has like 5 white kids total. Like most of them are Latino or Black. And so I think that it's what makes getting the research from that population a little bit more difficult. But to me, that's what my work is centered around. And I've been like, people are like, oh, just don't do it. It's such a hassle. Just find a way to get around it. And for me, I think it's really integral that I do get it done, because if it's such a hassle, then how often does this data even get out into the world?
I love the authenticity, the transparency, and the passion around it, because at the end of the day, it's actually what's going to take us through to the very end. But we've been having the opportunity to talk to Gio from Arizona State University, working on storytelling and video game. And this is Taiwo Afolabi signing out. And thank you so much again, Gio, for taking the time. And see you in the next episode.
You have been listening to Glocal Voices, the official podcast of the Center for Socially Engaged Theatre at the University of Regina. For more details about the center, visit www.cset.ca.